was a night like no other in the ancient city of Kandahar. The air was heavy with secrets, and the moon cast eerie shadows across narrow alleyways. A group of us had gathered for an evening of storytelling and remembrance. Children sat cross-legged, staring wide-eyed at the old fool in their midst, whose fantastic tales of the paranormal intoxicated his gullible audience. The old man regaled the children with tales of a place in the city, a place that none dared approach after dark, the Cursed Well of Kandahar. The waters of the well, once clear and pure, allegedly harboured an evil as dark as night itself. "Imagine a well," said the old man, his expression serene yet solemn. A well so ominous that anyone who dared to gaze into its waters would assuredly see a reflection, not of their own face, but of their impending death. Several children gasped. Many hid their faces behind trembling palms. "They say the well was once a source of life, quenching the thirst of generations," continued the old man. "But that was before the curse, a curse that turned the life-giving well into a gateway to the underworld. No one could say how or why the curse began, but most knew well enough to stay away. Deep beneath the surface of the water," continued the old man, "a sinister spirit lurks, waiting to claim misguided souls. Any who've ever gazed into those dark waters saw a different vision of their own demise. Some dismissed the visions as nightmares, whilst others tried in vain to escape the inevitable, but all met the same fate, a terrifying prospect, indeed. I was unconvinced, thinking his tales were nothing more than myths meant to stop curious children from venturing too far from home." "You really believe all these stories, old man?" I asked. "A cursed well? Vengeful spirits?" The other children stared at me, mouths ajar, with expressions that I mistook for admiration. The old man shook his head, scarcely able to conceal his disdain. "Only a fool claims to speak with authority on matters of which he knows nothing." "What a bunch of superstitious nonsense," I scoffed. The old man's theatrics were interrupted by a pair of squawking birds. One predator, the other prey, whose frenzied chase distracted the crowd. I seized the opportunity to escape. Under the steady glow of the distant moon, I sprinted down narrow alleyways, making my way to the outskirts of the city. Though I didn't know the precise location of the notorious well, it was easy enough to find. Partially obscured by shadows, the stone structure that housed the well was weathered and worn, the lone structure on a vast desert. It took all my strength to push aside a few boulders that had been strategically placed at the entry to block the passage of wayward souls. Moonlight streamed through cracks in the ceiling, casting shadows on walls that were covered in centuries-old inscriptions, faded by time. The air that night was calm, not a breath of wind to disturb the cool, moonlit water. I got down on hands and knees and leaned over the rim of the pool, staring intently into the deep, dark water, wanting, perhaps willing, something to happen. But of course nothing did. My suspicions had been confirmed. The tales were nonsense, silly myths designed to stop curious children from venturing too far from the city. I couldn't say how much time I spent staring into the void, but eventually my eyes grew heavy and I began to crave the comforts of home. No sooner had I decided to leave than my skin prickled with pins and needles. A chill coursed down my spine, my entire body shuddered. The still waters undulated, rippling outward. Small waves crashed soundlessly against stone. At the bottom of the pool, the subtle yet luminous outline of a dark face appeared. In that moment, I knew I had made a terrible mistake. I'd awakened something that ought never to have been disturbed. The well's malevolent power surged, sucking the oxygen from the small dark chamber, suffocating me. I wanted to flee but was unable to move. The submerged entity glared up from the depths, morphing into a likeness of me. My twisted reflection moved of its own volition, a tapestry in motion, providing a crushing glimpse of my demise. I saw myself lying on a cold stone floor, looking up at an unfamiliar ceiling adorned with Arabic script and tiles arranged in an ornate mosaic, surrounded on all sides by dancing flames. As quickly as it had appeared, the image disappeared. The oxygen rushed back into the chamber, and I drew in as much air as my lungs would allow. In myriad small ways, everything felt different. The ceiling seemed further away, as if I had somehow grown smaller, and the air was as cold as death. Determined to avoid the awful fate etched onto cursed water by the malevolent force, I pushed myself up to standing, stumbled backward, and fled. Back within the imposing walls of the ancient city, I ran up one alley and down another. The darkness followed, its pursuit relentless, as if night itself had turned against me. I sought refuge within the walls of an ancient mosque, but even inside that sacred space, I was neither safe nor alone. Scratching, crackling static invaded my ears. The darkness spawned an unholy creature that was shrouded from head to toe in sinuous white cloth. Through a gap in the fabric that engulfed its face, eyes like the sun glared aflame. White cloth shifted and swirled around his solid yet amorphous body as he drifted, weightless, toward me. The creature extended a spectral hand. The static became louder, more aggressive. I clamped my eyes shut, wishing the entity away as hard as I had wished him into being. In my mind's eye, I saw my reflection in the water, that soul-crushing vision of my impending death. Accompanying this image were whispered tales of agony, of lost souls, and of a curse that would bind my soul to the well for eternity. In those final moments, I realized the consequences of my hubris. For defying the warnings of my elders, I would be forced to pay the ultimate price. I clutched my chest and fell, hitting the back of my head on the cold stone floor. I awoke some time later, head spinning, and I glanced up. The ornate ceiling was adorned with mosaic tiles and rimmed with Arabic script, and I was surrounded on all sides by dancing flames. The last thing I remember were the burning eyes of a shrouded ghoul and the all-consuming darkness. The Cursed Well of Kandahar had claimed its final victim. Or had it? Some say the well still waits, lurking in the shadows, ready to devour the next unsuspecting soul who dares to defy its malevolent power. And when that day comes, I will be there, waiting at the bottom of the well.